Hey, let's keep the Star-Spangled Party rolling here on the U.S. Report this 4th of July. Joining me now is editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal, Gerard Baker. Gerard, thanks so much for joining me. And we've got to talk about the big news, which is the big, beautiful bill, which was finally passed by the House. Now, as I said at the start of the show, there's a lot to like in there, but a lot of stuff to be concerned about, too. But put this in a bigger context. This has been a remarkable first 6 months for the second term of Donald Trump, hasn't it? I mean, nobody would have thought this was coming at the start of this administration.
James, well, thanks for having me. You're absolutely right. I mean, it has been an extraordinary 6 months. And think about it in these terms, James. Australia has a parliamentary system. The United Kingdom has a parliamentary system. Most democracies do have a parliamentary system in which, when a government gets a majority, it can basically do pretty well what it likes. The United States, as you well know, system is very different. It's not a parliamentary system. It's a divided system of government where they elect the president and the members of Congress completely separately. Typically, that means that, those two branches of government, very hard to get them on the same page. And even when a president has a majority of his own party in the Senate and the House of Representatives, very rarely is he able to just get through pretty much everything he wants. This president is really proving to be an extraordinary exception. This bill, the Big Beautiful Bill Act, which, as you say, I'm speaking to you Thursday evening here in New York. It passed just a few hours ago, Thursday afternoon, by the way, in time for Donald Trump's own sort of personally imposed deadline of July the 4th. It is a massive bill. As you say, there's lots of things that one may not like about it, but it's a huge permanent tax cut for both corporate, on both the corporate and the personal side. It contains really significant cuts in spending, particularly in some welfare programs, big increases in spending for defense and for border security. It adds to the debt significantly. But again, overall, James, it's one of the most significant pieces of domestic legislation passed in the United States in the last 20 or 30 years. And it's been achieved with very small majorities in both the House and the Senate. And it just speaks to Donald Trump's extraordinary political authority, which I think, again, in the last 30 or 40 years or so is just unprecedented.
It is unprecedented, and I don't think we've seen, a president, certainly since Watergate, who's been able to impose that sort of power and will, on the whole system. But I want to know then, now, what is the next step, though? What is the next step for this administration? Because having used a lot of political capital to get this very big thing through that sweeps away a lot of the Biden program and even a lot of the Obama program away, is the next shift, I've heard it suggested that the strategy is going to now start to pick off Democrat programs on kind of 80-20 issues where most people agree with the Republicans and force Democrats to take extreme positions voting against common sense single issue items.
Look at what Donald Trump has again achieved, and you may not like it all, but look what he's done in the first 6 months. He has essentially shut the border. We have almost no illegal border crossings anymore. The numbers are down to about 6,000 a month. The peak of the Biden administration, they were running at 200. They were running about 200,000 a month. He has imposed these tariffs that he's done. Now he's backed off some of the more extreme ones, but the actual tariff effects of the effects of the tariffs that he has imposed so far amount to about an average 15% tariff rate on all U.S. imports. That was 3% before he came into office. He's taken extraordinary measures on the international front. He's done what presidents have not been able to do in the past, which is get NATO members to agree to spend much more on their defense. He's been the first president to strike against Iran in the last 50 years. That's the agenda, James. Now, you're absolutely right. Part of the continuing agenda and part of his success again so far is to have essentially marginalized the Democrats. Remember that election last year was pretty close. Trump likes to talk about it as a landslide. He won the popular vote by 1.5 percentage points, very narrow majorities in the House and the Senate. Democrats, no reason for the Democrats to be in the condition they're in. But he has managed, I think, through focusing on the issues, the kind of issues you talk about, illegal immigration, the transgender issue, getting America, making America sort of great again in the world, getting these tax cuts through, by putting the Democrats in a position where they seem to be adopting extreme positions. They're on the side of illegal immigrants. That's not popular. They're on the side of people who believe in that men should be allowed to play women's sports. So what you've got, and then on top of that, you've got the Democratic Party itself reaching for the extreme. You had the primary election of this mayor in New York, mayoral candidate in New York last week, Zoran Mamdani, who is basically described himself as a democratic socialist. The leading figures in the Democratic Party right now, James, are Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also describes herself as a socialist, and Bernie Sanders, who also describes himself as a socialist. So not only has Trump been able to achieve all this for his domestic and international agenda, he's been able to marginalize the Democrats, make them seem the extreme party, make them seem out of step with Americans. And exactly as you say, we can expect to see much more of that, I think, now over the next 6 months.
Well, so then this is a really interesting question to me, because in normal political calculus, you would think the Democrats would try and move to the center to try and recapture the votes, the common sense middle voters in the United States that they lost in the last election because they'd gone so extreme. What you're saying here is the Democrats seem to almost be having, you call it Tea Party moment. They're going their own way. They're going hard left because that's what their own populist wing is going for. Are they going to become kind of Trumpy and populist, but on the left now? Is that where the Democrats are going?
That is what it looks like, James. Look, exactly. When you've had essentially, I don't think it's an exaggeration to describe what Donald Trump has achieved or is doing here as a revolution. It is a political revolution, the likes we haven't seen this in the United States in at least 50 years, perhaps not since FDR was president. It is a radical remaking of the American political of the American political order. Now, when you have a revolution like that, a party can go, the opposition party can go two ways. It can embrace the revolution. It can say, look, the president, is the president. He's changing a lot of things. A lot of those things are popular, and therefore we have to go along and we have to kind of accommodate the revolution. Or they can say, okay, this is a revolution from this side. We're going to do a revolution. Obviously, there's an appetite out there for radical change. Well, here's our radical change. The president may be right wing. We're going to be left wing. That's the choice parties face. It's a choice not dissimilar to what the Democratic Party did after 1980 when Ronald Reagan was elected. It embraced, Walter Mondale, you'll remember very well, became the candidate in 1984. Now, no one would describe Walter Mondale as a socialist, but in those political terms, he was very, very liberal, very left wing. That's exactly what the Democratic Party is doing again. It rarely works. I think it looks, if they continue down this route, and I have to say, James, a lot of people I speak to in the Democratic Party are horrified by this. They are horrified by the idea that the Democratic Party, the face of the Democratic Party, is a socialist mayor of New York and a socialist member of Congress from New York. They know that people are not going to vote for those kind of policies and those kind of people in the general election. But right now, as you say, that's where all the momentum is.
Absolutely fascinating, and I'm going to be really interested to watch how this plays out between now and the next midterm elections. But I want to end on a great piece, because it is the 4th of July, it is Independence Day weekend, that you've written in the Wall Street Journal, and it's about the song America the Beautiful and Ray Charles's rendition of it, a very famous rendition from 2001. Tell us about that rendition, and why it made you, who are clearly, as Sting sang, an Englishman in New York, made you feel more grateful to live in the United States. Just your reflections on what this day and this weekend means for you living in New York and for America.
I do. Well, thanks. And again, thanks very much for referencing the column. Look, it is the 4th of July, and it's the quintessential American holiday. One of the great, America, like all countries, has great patriotic songs. One of those most famous, and I think personally my favorite patriotic song, is America the Beautiful, which speaks of amber waves of grain and sea to shining sea, very familiar lyrics. But it also, its refrain is, as written by the original author and the original writer in the 19th century, Catherine Lee Bates, is God shed his grace on thee, meaning may God shed his grace. It's a prayer. It's asking God to shed his grace on this country. And Ray Charles, the great, brilliant R&B soul singer, performer, performed this song many, many times. And he always sang it by saying, God done shed his grace on thee. In other words, as a statement of past fact, that this is a country on whose grace, on whom God has shed his grace. And it was a subtle change from the original meaning of the song. But I actually, as I thought about it, as I reflected on it, I think it is a valuable thing. God, this is a very lucky country. I know I'm careful to use that term for Australian. This is a wonderfully blessed country. It is extraordinary resources, extraordinary people, extraordinary ideals, extraordinary values. And I don't think people often enough in this country, or indeed anywhere else in the world, acknowledge that enough and don't express gratitude for that. I think gratitude is the essence, actually, of a successful life. But certainly, gratitude is something. Gratitude for the country, gratitude for the blessings this country has, is something that I think would really benefit and would perhaps take some of the kind of harsh sting out of so much of our politics if more and more people said, look, whatever may be wrong with this country, and there certainly are, no one's denying there's a lot of things wrong with it, it's very blessed. We're very fortunate, and we should express that gratitude, especially people like me as an immigrant. As you say, I came from Britain. Britain's a great country too, but I came here and I love this country, and I do believe it's particularly blessed, and I think it's important that we recognize that.
Well, as an American migrant to Australia, I think both countries could probably learn a little bit from that lesson. Gerard Baker, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you soon again here.